Hello, I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and if you're a regular to this channel, you know that a lot of the videos I create are really just showing the positive ways of moving forward in prison. Unfortunately, not everybody has a positive experience when they're moving through prison, and in our effort to try and help people understand what's coming and what they can do to prepare for a better outcome, I think that I also have to show you some of the challenges that other people face. And in today's video, I'm going to be revealing a letter. I'm actually going to be reading from a letter that I received from a young man who surrendered to prison not long ago. Now, first, the backstory. This individual was a head of sales for a large company. His case has received a lot of publicity, and he is really going through the enormous withdrawal that many people face when they first surrender to prison. So why don't I read the letter to you and let you kind of get in touch with what happens to a lot of people who go in. And I will say that this person did a lot of work preparing. He had worked with my partner Justin for more than a year. I worked together with him on a mitigation program. I think that these efforts helped him along that journey, but it did not get him ready for what it means to surrender to federal prison during the COVID pandemic. Let me read. Hello. I wanted to try and highlight my first few days in prison. The memories are daunting, and they will torment me for the rest of my working days. Still, I pray. I pray that I will come home to my family safely, with my mind and my body intact. I truly believe that only a higher power can ensure this happens, and I am positive I would not be alive today without something far greater and stronger than me. It was Tuesday, May the 19th, 2020. I had been dealing with my legal issues since 2015. I was indicted in December of 2016. I was actually looking forward to coming to prison, and I wanted to get this over with. But I was wrong. I was wrong about looking forward to coming to prison. After a restless night with my wife, my two daughters, the sun came up. This in itself was ironic. The sun coming up on the same day I was about to surrender to prison. In any case, I put my prescription bottles, my index card with my key contacts, and 9 photos of my family into a Ziploc plastic bag. That was it. This was all I could bring with me after 46 years of life on this planet. I would leave all of my possessions behind. I wouldn't have a cell phone. I wouldn't have documents. I wouldn't have albums, CDs. But most importantly, I wouldn't have my family. I tried to be strong for my daughters, but we all cried as I walked out the door. I cried much less than I did 2 days previously. I cried the most 2 days prior as I hugged my oldest daughter in her bedroom. I cried hysterically as I said, I am sorry. I just kept telling my daughters, I am sorry. As my wife and I walked out the door, we heard our daughters screaming. I have never heard my girls appear to be in so much pain. Again, I kept saying to myself, I am sorry. I came to the realization of just how much I hurt my family. My wife was strong. She did not cry one time the day that I left. She did not cry on the 90-minute drive down. She did not cry when the officers came and took me away from her arms in the prison lobby. She is my rock. She is incredible. Now let me back up for a second. My wife and I arrived at the prison, pulling into the parking lot, nervous. I felt anxious to get out of the car and walk inside. If I only knew what was to come, I would have gotten back in the car and raced away for the nearest highway. I swear on my life, I absolutely would have ran for my life. You may think I am exaggerating, but it turns out that I was not. My wife and I approached the front door. I heard a few of the other inmates working on the grounds saying, "That's a new self-surrender." I became instantly nervous. I went to the open door, and immediately 2 very large officers walked outside to greet us. They yelled at me, "Where is your mask?" I answered, "It's in the car, sir." The officer instructed my wife to go back to the car and to get my mask. I was now in their custody. There was no turning back, and I knew it. I waited with the officers outside. My wife walked to get the mask, and then she returned. I put on the mask, already sweating and feeling as if I was having trouble breathing. The mask exacerbated things for me, for sure. The officers told me I could sit down and wait with my wife for my name to be called. Then told me it was time to say my last goodbyes, because due to the coronavirus, there would not be any visiting in the prison. Little did I know that there would be no visiting in the future either. We sat together for hours, waiting. We hardly spoke. We were both so nervous. I kept thinking about my lower back pain. It was killing me from sitting in that chair. I needed Advil. Boy, knew that I was soon going to be in a lot more pain. After hours, the warden came with 2 officers, and the officer said, "It is time." I asked if I could hug my wife goodbye. They allowed me to do so. I gave her half a hug and walked away with the officers. Little did I know that I wouldn't be seeing my wife again for I didn't know how long, maybe not until I got out. It has been 2 months and I have not seen my wife or my children. Typically, I would have been seeing them at visiting at least once a week. But all visiting is closed due to the coronavirus, and most likely this visiting opportunity will not open until the next year. I walked through the metal detectors. Then I began to walk into the prison. I saw inmates scattered all over the place. I heard loud voices. Then I heard yelling, screaming, and fighting. It was all normal, but it wasn't normal for me. I've never heard so many angry people in all of my life. The officer turned back to me and asked a question. He said, "Can you fight?" I responded apprehensively, telling him that I wanted to avoid fights if I could. He said, "Well, it would be better if you could fight." The psychological games had already begun, and I was already rattled. Then he asked me if I knew where I was going in the prison. I said I was told that I'm going to the camp. He responded, "Well, first you have to do 2 weeks in isolation for quarantine." I began to shake and sweat. My greatest fears were coming to fruition. Essentially, I was being sent to the segregated housing unit. Before going, I was put in a temporary cell. There were no bars, just concrete walls. They left the cell door open and handed me a bologna sandwich. I didn't eat. The officer said, "What's the matter? You don't like my cooking?" I forced the sandwich down. I was just on the street with my wife a few hours ago, but now I'm in a cell, eating a bologna sandwich. I was strip searched. They told me to take off all my clothes, to lift my balls, to squat and open my ass cheeks. I was fingerprinted and photographed for what would be my ID card, and I would have to use it with me every day that I am here, every day, for as long as I was here. I felt myself sweating profusely. The officer said, "Are you nervous?" I said, "Yes, very nervous." He said, "Don't worry, you're in good hands." He was being sarcastic. He said, "Follow me." He handed me a blanket and a sheet. No pillow, no soap, no towel, no toothbrush, nothing. He led me into the cell and shut the door. That was it. I was alone in a prison cell. I thought before I went into prison that I would work out inside. There was just enough room to maybe do a push-up. I tried to calm myself down. I lay on the bed. The mattress was filthy, and no one taught me the special way to tie your sheets on the mattress so it would stay filthy. Every time I moved, the sheet slid off. I was laying on a mattress with everything you could possibly imagine on it. Feces, sperm, urine, and filth. There were insects crawling everywhere. I thought I would try to wipe the place down, but I didn't have anything to wipe it down with. Nothing to clean the toilet seat with. I also just realized I didn't have toilet paper. I didn't have soap. I started to panic. Somehow, I slept a little that night. They did the census count at 10 in the evening, midnight, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning. This is how I would know what time it was, because I didn't have a clock. I didn't have a calendar. The minutes, the hours, the days, they were all standing still. I wonder how I would make it another 13 days like this. Then, after 5 days, the officer came. He unlocked the door. He told me I have 15 minutes to shower, to email, and to use the phone. I desperately want to call my wife and tell her I am alive. No one set up my phone account. I dialed over and over, but the phone didn't work. I asked the officer. I told him that my phone didn't work. He said, "You have 5 minutes left to shower." I asked, "Do you have soap? Do you have a towel?" He said, "No." I went back into my cell and just sat on the floor. My back was killing me. I couldn't lie down anymore. I felt dizzy from lying on my back for so long. I sat on the filthy floor. I wore just a few days earlier a shirt that I wouldn't touch anymore. I did this for several more days. I thought I just had to last long enough to call my wife one time. I finally had an inmate orderly who spoke Spanish. He told me to get up. The officers never helped me. I never had a toothbrush. On my 9th day, I still didn't have a toothbrush. The cell didn't have a mirror. I had never gone this long without seeing myself. I could only imagine what I looked like. I tried to see my reflection in one of the bars hanging over the lockers. By the 9th day, I became delusional. I hadn't eaten in days. I swore I would never eat the prison food, which I now never miss a meal or even a bite of any tray that is provided. I was hearing things. I was hearing Bruce Springsteen through the window. I was also hearing another song over and over. I heard the words to these songs. I wondered what was happening to me. I could not believe that in just 9 days of no sleep and no food, how fast I had deteriorated. I started to think about my wife and my daughters. I prayed to be able to go home, but I couldn't go home. I was trapped. I was white. I was Jewish. I was a privileged boy that grew up in a summer camp, but now I was trapped in a cell. There was no camp. This was solitary confinement, as evidenced by the fact that the cell walls in the building doubled as a segregated housing unit for other prisoners. I missed my family so much. I felt I would surely never see them again. I kept hearing things. I kept seeing things. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I had been up for the last 3 days straight. Finally, the psychologist came around. Everyone who came around would come to the cell door. They would either yell or they would knock hard. I felt stunned. I felt no longer a sense of alertness. I didn't have my glasses. I couldn't see. I could barely stand for the count. I didn't know there was a light in my cell. I didn't know until I stood for count one day. It was pouring rain and dark. I didn't know what time it was. The officer told me to stand for count. I jumped up, stood by the door, and looked straight forward into darkness. He yelled, "Turn on your lights!" But I didn't know where the light switch was. I couldn't do anything right. I couldn't find the light switch. I couldn't remember my Bureau of Prisons registration number. I couldn't remember my personal access code for the telephone. My brain wouldn't work. I would lie on my bed and repeat the same digits over and over in my head, trying to remember. But each time, a different set of numbers came to me. I told the psychologist that I was not in the SHU. I said I was in quarantine. I just wanted a book to read. She said that someone would come around with a word search or connect the dots or something to keep me occupied. And it came the following day, but I didn't get a pencil. I just stared at the dots and the numbers. I couldn't believe that I was resorting back to exercises that I did pre-kindergarten, but I couldn't even complete them. I asked for a stamp, for paper, for pencil. I thought I could write to my wife one more time before the end. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. I felt so upset, and I thought for sure that I was dying. I also thought that even if I lived, my brain would be dead forever. I sat on the floor shaking. I was living for a chance to talk to my wife once more. They let me out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a shower and a phone call or to send an email. I called my wife shaking, trying to talk, but mostly I just listened to her voice. I loved her so much. All I could think about was how sad she was, how she said the girls were sad, and how sad they would be if I didn't come home. The psychologist came the next day to check on me, as she did everyone routinely. I told her that I felt claustrophobic. She told me to breathe, and she gave me some handouts on breathing. She suggested that I use these breathing exercises to grow stronger. I thought it was terribly sad that I had a master's in social work, but I wasn't able to help myself, not one bit. That night, I lied on my bed. I said to myself, I am not going to die. I am just having a panic attack. I dozed in and out for a few hours. I opened my eyes and I saw the room spinning. I could not find my way to the door. I finally crawled and found the door. I didn't have a conscience or the strength of mind to know where I was. I didn't know what I said. Nothing was positive. I heard keys, I heard voices, I heard handcuffs, I heard walkie-talkies. They were coming for me. I lay on the floor and put my hands behind my back. They opened the door. They handcuffed my hands again. What was happening to me? I just wanted my wife. I felt trapped in an even tighter spot. The man said, I am the lieutenant, and this is prison. Not too long after, I found myself naked. I was wearing a smock. You can barely move your arms or your legs. I was in a glass room. I didn't have a blanket. I didn't have sheets. I didn't have a pillow. I had a cot to sleep on. This was certainly nothing like the camp I expected. People were watching me 24 hours a day. I still couldn't sleep. I tried to stay calm. As worse as things were to come, I knew that I had to try to stay calm. I tried to do push-ups naked on the floor. I didn't have a cup to drink water from. I'd kept drinking from the sink. I swore the first day that I would not do this. I thought I would wait to buy bottled water, but there isn't bottled water to consume in prison. One day I would have the luxury of a water fountain if I ever made it out of this mess. I sat here in this smock for more than 48 hours. I didn't sleep. They would not send me back to my cushy cell until I slept. But how could I sleep? I was having some sort of episode. Everyone told me that I would be fine in prison. Hey, they were clearly wrong. Something had gone wrong for me. Something was wrong with me long before I came to prison. I always battled depression and anxiety. Prison brought all of my weaknesses and my greatest fears out into the open. I woke up the next day and I saw people staring at me. They informed me that a psychologist was coming to speak with me. We spoke, and she informed me that I was going back to my cell. I'd never been so happy to go back to the place that basically caused a nervous breakdown for me. I would have a blanket, a sheet, and a cup of drinking water, and a cup that I could use to drink water from the sink. I got out for a shower and a phone call. I called my wife and I told her a little bit about what happened. She was at a loss for words. I met the orderly inmate in the unit. He gave me shower shoes. They were 5 sizes too big, or at least that's how they felt. He also gave me a towel and soap to wash my body and hair. He said, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be good." A few days later, they told me I was getting out of the quarantine and going over to the camp. I had a bed in a dorm. I had a toothbrush. I had a cup. I had a towel. I had bedding. This is where I have been for the last 6 weeks. The guy who said I was going to be good is looking out for me. I work out with him and his Cuban crew now. I got a ride in his car. That means up to 4 people work out together, and I am the fourth passenger. I miss my family so much that it hurts me terribly. I don't know when I'll see them again. Everyone said this would be easy. Unfortunately, this isn't easy. Be well. I love you. And that's the letter that I got from this young man who's been in prison for 6 weeks. Clearly, it hasn't been easy for him. There's a reason that it's hard. This is the time of the coronavirus. Visiting is closed. Access to phones are closed. Access to email is closed. Everything is harder. And it pains me to have to give this message. But the reality is we always have to live in the world as it exists. And the more we know about how others are doing it, the more we can prepare ourselves. At Prison Professors, we provide this information not to sugarcoat what's coming, but to let you know there is always a way through. I went through 9,500 days of it. And if you're going into this system, or if you're in this system, it's up to you to figure out a pathway through. Understand that there will be dark days, but within, you have the power to push through. You have the power to see what's going to come. I share this message with you with hopes that you go in there with your eyes wide open if you are going in there. Hopefully you're not going in there. If you subscribe to the Prison Professors program, you will see more content that I hope is more hopeful. But I think it's important to also reveal what others are experiencing. I suspect that he'll have a different story to tell on the other side of this journey, but it's difficult going in. I am Michael Santos with Prison Professors, and I do hope that you will subscribe to the program. I also hope that you may consider supporting our sponsors at cbdtv.com. Thanks.